Hello and welcome, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, folks, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome back to the Light 'em Up Lounge. It's boiling hot in Vienna today, so at least Dejan gets to enjoy a cigar outdoors. I'm sweating my balls off, so I went for a Guayabera today rather than a jacket. But still thought, we got to dress for the occasion since we have a very dear friend and a really good lad from the UK joining us today here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. And I really look forward to our session today with the one and only John Strange, head of hospitality at TOR Imports in the UK, co-founder of the Tea Keepers and formerly the Sober Cigar. I'm sure many of you have seen and heard John before on either one of our sessions. John was an early uh, part of the family, so to say, here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. And Soba Cigar was also, I think, a very important and valuable contribution to the cigar community, particularly during the challenging times of the COVID pandemic. Feels like ages ago. It feels like a different life, doesn't it, John? It's been a
Y-
while.
Yeah, a long time. I mean, firstly, thank you so much for that very kind welcome and for having me on here. It's funny because obviously, as you said, I've been a viewer of your show, and we've talked about this when we've met up, and it's strange to be sort of sat here with in the hot seat, as it were. So thank you so much. It's a huge honor. But yeah, the Sober Cigar was over lockdown and started off just simply as I guess it was a cigar smoker who had stopped drinking and then looked at, cigar publications and saw that most cigars were always advertising paired with cognacs and
Mm.
rums, whiskeys and spirits, etc. I just sort of felt a bit like, oh, okay, so where's the people who either don't want to drink or want to limit what they drink or want to, have a cigar and have a drink at lunchtime and not consume alcohol. So yeah, it just sort of came from that, as a lot of sort of ideas do, and then it materialized and grew. And it was originally just a shop where people go online and buy cigars and non-alcoholic drinks and cocktails and beers and all sorts. And then it grew into the subscription, which it sort of became more known for. And the time that I did, that was just an amazing, amazing experience. And I had some really loyal people, like from a few ones who would come on board, and every month we would have a Zoom with either the makers of the alcohol-free beer, and or the cigar, and we would just talk about it. And we had everybody from Matt Booth and Jose Blanco and a number of other people, and it was just, yeah, it was a fantastic time, and it was obviously it was a that was kind of the whole time of the birth of Zoom, so it worked out really well, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun.
And besides, it was sort of one of the first major steps for you, full on into the cigar industry. You have a very accomplished resume in the hospitality industry. You've worked for some much much applauded and multi-awarded chefs. You ran your own restaurant for a while and eventually joined the dark side of the force and ended up in the cigar industry. Um, Similar to myself, actually.
Mm.
And I'm curious as to how the transition felt for you, because I always say that there's so many similarities and parallels and intersections between the hospitality industry and the premium cigar world. And to begin with, I think hospitality is one of the best schools for life in general, and having worked in that industry is a blessing, even though a very challenging experience for many people. And I always treasured that. So I think the experience that you take with you from that oftentimes tough but also rewarding hospitality environment is a fundamental value that you can apply to so many different industries. And it's fascinating to see where these core principles and key learnings can then lead to once you apply them in different settings and different industries.
Yeah, I mean, with I guess the cigar journey for me was I've been saying for ages now, it's been like 15 years, but it must be 16 or 17 years that I've been a cigar smoker for. But at the start, it was more sort of dipping my toe into it and just enjoying it every so often. It wasn't as head dived into it as I am now. But every restaurant that I used to run of more the sort of premium fine dining side, I always just introduce a cigar offering, and whether that was a one Michelin star restaurant or an independent restaurant or that was more sort of gastro, sort of like country pub gastro. I always introduced a small cigar offering there, and it was just something that always worked. I mean, I ran pubs in a lot of really beautiful areas like the Cotswolds and just outside London and a few places. So they always fitted in really well. But it was only, I guess, once we sold our restaurant at the end of 2019, when just before the madness hit. Um, and that wasn't a calculated, decision to sell in. That was just we got the right offer and the stars aligned and we sold. But I guess with the cigar side, it was the more I was sort of and my own restaurant, I used to have a good sized humidor, and where we sold a lot of different cigars. But it was, yeah, it just took on more of a passion for me and just developed and grew into sort of when you're out, maybe once in a blue moon, you'll have a nice cigar, and it sort of became. I wanted to learn more about the product and find out about it as opposed to, oh, what's this? I'll just I don't smoke it. So yeah, it became much more of a passion project for me, and I think with I guess as I do when I dive headfirst into things like I'm passionate about, like cigars or in a previous life, alcohol. It was that was sort of my all-consuming passion. So yeah, I wanted to learn about it and talk about it. And then when I saw that there was maybe a potential gap in the market in terms of people weren't sort of catering more to the either sober or sober curious, whatever that weird phrase is. Um, and yeah, and it just eventually sort of led into that. And it wasn't a calculated decision. It was just, I think it just organically grew and sort of direct me to doing it. And the name Sober Cigar just sort of came quite naturally. And yeah, it was just a lovely, lovely time.
What I find fascinating is that the cigar industry is such a colorful and diverse amalgamation of people from various different backgrounds and coming from all sorts of inspirations and different industries and previous lives. And then eventually, we find ourselves in this industry that and you wouldn't even call it a job, it's more like a calling. But the one thing that I'm always fascinated with is how has your perspective and your look on premium cigars changed ever since you joined the industry rather than being just a consumer and just a passionate cigar enthusiast?
Oh, I mean, it's grown exponentially. You appreciate not just the product, but you appreciate the story behind it, and you get a real affinity with how it's made and where it's come and its full story. And I think that was what sort of got me in deeper to it, and what continues to drive my passion now is the not just an amazing cigar, but the story behind it. And yeah, I think that anybody who enjoys this industry, whether as somebody who works in it or just as a consumer, I think it's the passion of the people who make the product. It's the passion of the people around you that you're smoking a cigar with. And I know it's almost come cliched where people say that it's the gateway to conversations with anyone, and you can be in a room with different types of people from all walks of life. And it is cliched, but it's still very, very true. And I think that is what drives people's passion and the sort of the quest to try different cigars and pick up more knowledge and ultimately do the product justice.
Very true. It's a very positive outlook that you frame, and sometimes um, people are also mindful or worried that if you get involved with something you're truly passionate about in a more professional way, it can suck the fun out of what you enjoyed in the first place. But thankfully, that's clearly not the case with you. Um, you now had the hospitality division for
Mm.
tour imports in the UK, so you sort of managed to combine these two passions and these two lives, which I think is remarkable. And I take my hat off to Scott for his vision and his understanding of the industry and the market, um, putting particular focus on the hospitality side of things. And of course, London is a very particular market and has an extremely interesting history and legacy when it comes to premium cigars. And it deserves somebody like yourself who dedicates the time and the energy and the focus, particularly on the hospitality outlets like the five-star luxury hotels, and the lounges that you have in London. And of course, you take care of the much wider market that is the UK. But how would you describe the particularities that you're facing in your day-to-day job heading the hospitality division for TOR?
It's a good question because I think that what um, Scott saw and embraced was obviously the fact that my background and my passion, I still consider myself a guy in hospitality. I still see myself as a hospitality worker who just happens obviously to work in the cigar industry. So for me, I have that passion and understanding of hospitality. So it's not like, the retail side where, it's you can approach, there's an etiquette and there's a certain decorum and there's a certain way that things need to be done. And both with, waiters, with F&B managers, directors, as you know yourself. So I think it's just being able to empathize with the hospitality side and be able to relate to them and understand that it's not always it's well it's not always it's not full stop in hospitality about volume as such. That would be great if it was, but it's more about relationship building. It's about um finding a common ground with them and making them understand that you're not just there to sell a cigar. You're there to help them sell their wines and their spirits. And yes, obviously I don't drink anymore, but my background, was in wines and spirits from a work point of view as well as personal. But so yeah, it's been able to go in and say, right, well, we'll put together an offering, and you're looking at what the customer wants and what the consumer's wanting and what their guests want, and it's a different for every venue. And then you're able to go in and say, okay, so this is the training we're going to do, and we're going to focus the training not just on the cigar, but on its pairings and what it'll go with and how to upsell. Because ultimately, in hospitality venues, like a lot of places, they'll want to know, how does this affect my bottom line? How can I increase sales? How can we push upsells from this? And that's ultimately what it is geared to. So you're not going in just to say this is such and such a wrapper with such and such a filler and binder, etc. You're saying this is this and this will pair with this cocktail, and or if we maybe work in this, we can sort of push this side and we can put together a snacks menu. So it's a fully all immersive, all encompassing offering, which I don't think there's a lot of people doing. And as I said, it was very um, a great foresight with Scott to sort of give me the free rein to use my experience with hospitality and be able to, yeah, to be able to go in and offer that and use my contacts to our advantage and to create new partnerships and friendships. And so yeah, it's been great. And the cool thing is that because I will always see myself as a guy in hospitality, I get to, keep scratching that itch of being in hospitality and being there sometimes during service for events and things. But obviously now having a young family, you're not doing as we affectionately call them, the AFDs, which if you've got a potty mouth, you'll know what that means. And it's not doing those, and it's not doing 17 hours a day, and but it's being there and being involved in it and still getting the rush of service. So yeah, I feel very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing and being able to scratch all the itches. It's and learn every day. It's yeah, I'm very fortunate.
John, a couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of sitting right next to you at the City of London Cigars, hosting the Light 'em Up Lounge together when we
Mhm.
had Jeff Mute on the
Yeah.
show. And we spoke a lot about the hospitality aspect and the service component in the experience of a brick and mortar cigar shop and lounge. And as I said earlier, you could definitely make an argument for every cigar shop and lounge being a hospitality outlet in and by itself. But since in your role and the way you have things organized with TOR imports in the UK, you make a distinct or you make that distinction, I should rather say, between hospitality and shops or lounges. Um, where do you think that bars, restaurants, five-star hotels have maybe an advantage or a particular skill level, sort of an extra layer which they can offer to people who come and enjoy a cigar in their premises rather than just a more traditional tobacconist and a cigar shop that has a lounge adjacent?
Well, yeah, yeah, once again, good question. It's not to say that retail stores don't train because they do, and we as a company at TOR are involved very deeply with training, not just hospitality but retail across the board. But I do think that in hospitality, there's just a more um, inset mindset of training. Even before a shift, before every service, be it breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you would always round up all the trips. You would talk about the covers. You would talk about dietaries. You would talk, well, the dietaries only came in the last sort of 10 years, but you would talk about the dietaries. You would talk about any special requirements, and so the staff were very involved, and they knew everything that was happening, and there was that. And because it's a show, you're on show, and it's I think it's just there was a more they were more knowledge hungry in hospitality. I found at times that people would seek out more information because the more information they had, knowledge was power, so they're able to pass it on to the guest, and ultimately it was about service, be it whatever the reason for that is, be it tips, be it TripAdvisor, be it reviews of other sorts, be it um, feeling good because that's what your passion is. It's a number of reasons, but I think hospitality just has the right outlook because they give their staff the knowledge to go out and be the best custodians of the business they can possibly be.
Random question, but just because you dropped the word, things like TripAdvisor or Yelp and other stuff, there's a lot of pressure in the hospitality industry when it comes to ratings. Every single day you worried about the Michelin guy walking through the door and checking on your restaurant. Um, that's not really the case when you open and operate a cigar shop and lounge. However, this could also be an important aspect of how you communicate and how you market your business. And probably not a lot of people, or at least I wouldn't be aware of it, put so much emphasis on how people perceive, experience the venue, and then potentially talk about that in the online sphere. And whether that is face-to-face communication, which travels very quickly, we know, but even more so now accelerated through the means of social media and online and Google reviews, which is literally just a click away. And all of that can have a significant impact on your business.
Yeah, I mean, whether you agree with reviews or like them or don't, the bottom line is they are useful for a business because even if there are people leaving malicious reviews or people like, because the facts are people will leave a negative review before they'll leave a positive review. And that's just unfortunately the nature of the beast and human nature. But they still do give a snapshot. And yeah, I was very guilty of putting reviews on a pedestal when I had my own restaurant. And you do because it's your own blood, sweat, tears, and money in it. So it does hold in significance, and and whether it's a retail shop, whether it's a restaurant, bar, whatever. Um, but I definitely think people need to embrace reviews more. I think they need to be a little less defensive. And I'm saying this from from a knowledgeable point of view because I was defensive as anything with them. But I think people need to accept them. I think they need to look at them, take them potentially with a pinch of salt, but understand that there may be elements there that elements of truth that they may not like. And I think it's always good to sort of look at it. Yes, as I said, take it sort of with a pinch of salt, but look at it and see, is there meaning to it? Is there a bit of truth to it? Did something happen that, did somebody come in and, and you can see anything from, are the cigars kept in the right condition? Were they greeted when they came in? And it's these little things that can make a huge change. And you can see it, the ones who understand it, they understand that as soon as people come in, they want to be greeted warmly. And whether that's a retail shop or a restaurant or wherever, people want to be greeted. They don't want to sort of stand there and, you know, clock watch and think, oh, have they seen me? Have they not? And be ignored because it just doesn't. And it's the same as, when you're leaving, the most important part of any experience is not the whole experience that you've had with the waiter or the person in the shop. It's when you're paying and you're leaving. That's what they remember. It's like when you get the bill, if you've asked for the bill and you have to wait 10, 15 minutes, all these things, you could have had the best experience in the world. But if you're waiting for this last bit, that's unfortunately what people remember. So it's a thing, it's using reviews as a tool to think, what can I do to improve? And ultimately that's what it is. As a business, as an employee, whatever, what can I do to improve what I'm doing from the previous day?
Mhm. And that's very much it's a mindset thing, right? It's a culture that you live and breathe. And I know we both have a little bit of a hospitality man crush for Danny Myers and his wonderful book Setting the Table. And he speaks about that frequently, and he makes that sort of transition, or he almost like a transcendent thought where hospitality truly becomes a core value and principle that you can then incorporate into any other industry and whatever it is that you're doing. Uh, Talk to us a little bit about the UK market in more depth, please. Obviously, one could possibly make an argument that there's really two separate worlds, one being London as the waterhead of the whole thingy, and then the rest of the UK. And I say this with all due respect, but just by the sheer number and the concentration of legacy shops and cigar heritage in London, you probably have to look at it in that way. Uh, what makes the UK special for you as a cigar market, with all the pros and the cons, the good, the bad, the ugly?
I mean, the UK is, in terms of the wider world, it's obviously a small market, but it's a very important market. And that's not just from our point of view. Obviously, we've got the most available Cubans in any country. And especially there's a lot of consumption of that in London. So for us, it's not necessarily, we have to be, better than the Cubans or we have to sell more than Cubans. It's about we are proud as a company of the products that we carry and the lines that we carry and we just want to put that message across. So yes, there will always be that biasness in places like London, for example, that prefer at the moment Cuban cigars for a plethora of reasons. But for us, I think it's just important to focus on the cigars that we sell and what we're doing, obviously, and all the number one. So 13 of the 16 cigars of the New World cigars that have been rated number one, we're the importer for. So things like that, focusing on the training. Obviously, we've brought on, as a company, we've brought on Alfonso, who is basically our ambassador, who's going around training, as I said, not just hospitality, but retail. So yes, it is. It's an interesting market. It's a tough market. It can be frustrating because you've got these wonderful cigars at our disposal, and people just want, the Partagas D4 and all these sort of traditional lines, and it is tough, but just because it's tough, it's still fun, and it's still, I think it's a challenge, but it's one that I honestly feel that we're winning. The numbers are looking good for New World cigars. It is interesting because lines that you'll bring in you think will work doesn't necessarily work. It's there's still issues with obviously the black market, etc. But yeah, it's all in all, I think the UK cigar scene is in a really good place. It's the hospitality side, from my point of view, is getting busier. The retail side, it's improving every day, and obviously the guys are out there with them doing more events. So it's fun, and it makes and I think the bottom line is that all of the importers, not just us, but everyone seems to be stepping up their game. Everyone seems to be putting in more effort to events and representing themselves and the cigar UK cigar industry well. And I think we're all doing ourselves proud. So it's a tough time, but it's a good time.
You clearly mentioned the challenges. On the positive note, what would you say is one thing that a lot of other countries or other markets could learn or take away from how the UK scene and community works and operates?
Less is more.
Excellent
Definitely less
point.
is more. I think that it's funny because, and I was guilty of this, where there's so many brands entering the market, cigar brands, that it gets overwhelming, and I think it drowns out. It's just too much noise at times. So I think that having a sort of a more of a focused approach to cigars that, obviously all cigars and all companies have a story, but the ones that resonate most with us as a company as well as the our partners and consumers. And I guess it's yeah, less is more. Just don't throw in as much as against the wall and seeing what sticks. And you can see it's at times I think too much choice gets confusing. And yeah, I think that sort of can be to people's detriment or to an offer's detriment.
Do you think of that as a chicken and an egg problem? Like, where does that, you know, this whole idea of you have to come out with a new limited edition every other month, and there's this constant influx of new product into the market, and this hunger and thirst for not necessarily innovation, but just the odd question, what's new? Um, do you think that's more coming from the manufacturers trying to push product into the market, or is it a demand question coming from the consumer asking for something new all the time?
I think, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit of both. I think as people nowadays, our attention spans are shorter.
Here's
I
one.
think
Cheers.
we sort of want to see the newest and shiniest thing. Um, and you can see that in a lot of companies that sort of do cigar releases, etc. So it's a bit of both, but obviously then cigar companies have to support that and they have to react to that. So it's a wee bit of both, and it's as you said, the chicken or the egg. It's definitely one drives the other. I'm just not sure who's steering and who's being pulled. I think it changes on a on a week to week basis.
And do you see any writings on the wall that also in other markets people start to be a little more mindful or thinking about that more? You travel to the US a lot as well. How does it feel when you compare these markets or the dynamics that we see there? Most of the time, we talk to US retailers or US based manufacturers. So I think it's very refreshing to have your perspective from a very different market as well. But do you think that that sentiment is spreading a little bit?
The sentiment in terms of there's too
Less is more, and
less.
we've seen enough of all these limited editions and new stuff coming to the market.
I don't think so. I mean, the only reason I'm sort of saying that quite quickly is because on one of my last trips, I went to Jeff Boschwitz's shop in Florida. What's it called? On Sand Lake Road. And it's like this massive supermarket of cigars. And I've never seen anything
Corona
like it.
cigar, you mean?
What, sorry?
Corona cigar from Jeff
Yes,
Borshowitz.
Corona. Yes, that's the one. And it's just choices beyond choices. And So I know not everyone obviously is like that, but there is there does seem to still be that demand of, you've got to carry the latest drop, you've got to have this, you've got to have that, and then there's limiteds. And um, so yeah, I mean, obviously the US is the biggest consumer of cigars by far, so they will always have room for more. Whereas obviously with us, it's the usual story about limited humidor space, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to be more of a UK slash European. I don't use the term problem in inverted commas. It's not so much of a problem. It's just kind of it's just the way it is. I think America will always, have a big offering and a variety. And there's obviously a lot of sort of more of the mom and pop stores that sort of have a dedicated line and they do very well at what they do. But a lot of ones seem to, they have to carry more and more. And you see it with a lot of stores that it's just big spaces. I saw the other day somebody is it Secreto and they've installed their third walk-in humidor, which is massive in a little store. So yeah, I think that is just the American way is just to get more in, which it's not right, it's not wrong. I mean, if you've got the room and you've got the shelf space, fill it. It's just I don't ever envisage seeing it being a UK um mindset.
Now, the sort of the flip side to that coin is what you probably sometimes experience when you work with smaller restaurants or bars or a hotel that doesn't necessarily have the same shelf space or even the lounge space to accommodate such a variety, yet you still want to curate a beautiful small portfolio that offers a wide array of taste profiles and different characteristics with the cigars. How do you approach curating such a selection under very restrained conditions and with very little space to work with?
It's funny because the approach that I have with, for example, there's a Michelin star restaurant that I work with, and their kind of script for what they wanted is very different to the likes of a boutique hotel or boutique hotels that we'd work with, where they're very much like, okay, so what sells well? You know, what what's a big cigar and what is a certain medium profile that it isn't too strong, isn't too weak. It's sort of a more run-of-the-mill approach, whereas more of the Michelin star fine dining sides will be like, okay, we're going to focus more on this sort of sensation. So if we want somebody to take a break, or if they're after they have their meal, we want them to have a cigar that has this note or it has this sort of experience. What can you recommend? So with those ones, because chefs really understand their flavors and their food, they put that across their whole offering. So when they're speaking about cigars, they're like, what can I do that will heighten this cocktail or will do this and will so it's very, very, very focused and very detailed. I mean, I did a list for a Michelin star, well, a two Michelin star restaurant, and it was only 7 cigars, but those 7 cigars, I can remember how many months it took. It took probably 7, 8 months to put it together and present it to them and talk about it and explain it to them and then ultimately for them to try the cigars as well before they said, "Yep, this is the one. This is what we want." And so yeah, it's but that to me, I love that side. It's not so great from Scott's point of view when one account's taking all this time to place an order. But for me, I love it because you're creating and you're crafting a menu, whether it's a cigar menu or a cocktail menu or a tasting menu. You're crafting something that has got so much emphasis on it and every ingredient, and it's just a very special experience. That's not to say that obviously the hotels or the restaurants that aren't sort of fine dining that they don't want it. They want something different. They'll either want something that is a certain smoking time. So they're drinking more or they're coming back for food afterwards, or it's not killing their palate. But everyone's different. But I do like when we do the fine dining ones more because they're a challenge, and I think that's where I have to sort of dig into my old memory and go, right, okay, what works?
Let's talk a little bit about the pairing aspect. And obviously, with the tea keepers, you also have your your fingers involved in another beautiful and very complex business and passionate product that is tea.
He is for closer.
There you go. Well, first of all, tell us a little bit more about the tea keepers, and then let's dive into the intricacies of pairing cigars and tea a little more.
Okay, so the tea thing came about once again very naturally. I am as a Belfast kid, I drank a lot of tea. And when I was a kid, my mum and dad used to own a hotel and bar outside Belfast. So I used to, take the tea bags apart and just play around with it. And I don't know if my dad said I was making a mess, but for me, it was sort of just playing around with and mixing Earl Grey's in with, like a traditional breakfast tea. And from that, I just always had a bit of an interest. So when I ran restaurants for other chefs and we would do tasting menus, then when the sort of the more alcohol-free side came in towards the end of my sort of hospitality career, I then started doing different tea pairings and would do a lot of sort of tea shows at the table and different yeah, just different types of tea. And when we opened our own restaurant in 2013, it was always the aim to have our own tea offering, but just for us, not to sell, not to retail. It was just going to be for our business. And pretty soon, it caught on. I had chef friends who were like, "Oh, I'm opening a restaurant, or I've taken over this restaurant. I'd really like your teas there." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And we used to, when people came into our restaurant, they would go, "Oh, that tea's fantastic. Can I buy some?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, we don't sell it, but here's a bag." And then after about a year, I was like, "Christ, I'm giving away a lot of money." And it's we need to do something about this. So I think I was sitting with the wife one night, and we're like, "What are we going to call it?" And I was like, "Tea keepers." And I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "Well, I don't know, because we're the keepers of the tea." And I was like, "It's ridiculous." But, 8 odd years later, it's still a name and it works. But so yeah, and it's very unique where we have been going for, I said, over 8 years now. We supply we don't push the business anyway. My wife works full time. Obviously, I work full time. So we blend on the weekends and she does all the posting on social media and all that side. But we have, a good amount of trade customers through independent, and we sort of made this rule that we were only going to work with independent businesses. The the most we have is a chain of cafes, and I think there's four. And that's where we say, well, that's enough. But we ended up getting in with a guy I'm very friendly with, a chef called Michael Dean in Belfast, who was the longest holding Michelin star chef. And we started supplying his epic Michelin star restaurant not long after we launched. And we've been supplying the company ever since. And then there's his Michelin star chef then moved and opened his own restaurant in Northern Ireland, and we supply them and one, their other business. And it just sort of grew from word of mouth, and we don't push it, we don't sort of promote it anywhere near as sort of what we should do, but and we kind of like it like that. It ticks over nicely in the background. We have an online sales presence, so we sell to Europe and we export to America. And yeah, it nicely wipes its own mouth, and it's for us. It's fun. I mean, if you see the branding on the website, it's just fun branding. It's not designed to be serious and and whatever else. But the bottom line is just really really good tea, really good high quality premium leaf tea, but just with a bit of fun. So if you see the branding, it's all stuff that my wife and I designed. So our biggest seller is the Belfast breakfast, and it's what does it say at the bottom? An anytime type of tea, so it is, and it has the cranes of Holland and Wolf in Belfast, and then we have the Earl Grey and vanilla. So it's just sort of regular teas, with a bit of a twist. I mean, for example, I don't like green tea. I think green tea's stinking, but we do because I find it very bitter. Whereas we do a Japanese cherry green tea, so we dehydrate fruit and we blend it in with the green tea, so the fruit negates the bitterness a little bit and just lifts it up and gives it a bit of sweetness. So yeah, and then from there we got people asking what pairs with cigars. So we worked on some new blends. So the tea I'm drinking at the minute is peppermint and licorice. And when I'm not reviewing a cigar, that's a tea that works really well because it refreshes your palate. You've got the licorice that gives you a little bit of sweetness, which works really well with the likes of Maduro. and it's just a nice pairing for cigars. And for me, the whole idea of a tea is to, in between having a smoke, is to refresh your palate, and that's what I feel the teas do nicely.
What is your philosophy when it comes to pairing, whether it's drinks, non-alcoholic, alcoholic, but also food with cigars in general? You know, sometimes you can make a point that you can either go the complementary route, or you contrast whatever you find in the cigar, and then you pick your beverage or your food accordingly. Which camp do you fall into, or would you say it very much depends, and you can go or you should go either way?
If you'd asked me this question when I had my restaurant, I would have given you this very detailed, elaborate answer about the pairings and you've got to pick out the nuances. Whereas now it's kind of like, meh, whatever you want to drink with your cigar. And I know that obviously we've got Frankie here and she's going to give me dirty looks, but I think for pairing, it's if it's not for a review basis, I think drink what you enjoy, smoke what you enjoy. People complicate life so much, and whether it's spirits or wine or cigars, they want to, tell me what I should pair with this, and tell me what, this is going to taste like, and tell me what I'm going to get from this. And it's like, you tell me what you get from it, you tell me what you enjoy, and you smoke it and you drink it. And I think, yeah, now it's very much, a lot of the coffee I'll drink with a cigar is just a black coffee with a tiny little bit of caramel syrup, which everyone at work laughs at me. I carry this little medicine bottle with syrup, and it's just, but it's for me that's what I enjoy, and when I'm drinking something that makes me happy, when I'm smoking something that makes me happy, then who is anyone to say that's wrong? So for me, it's fill your boots, have what you like.
I couldn't agree more with you, and especially also when you think about sommeliers, when you think about certain craft bartenders, at some point, when it becomes pretentious, and these service providers feel like they have to educate their guests, who they have in front of them, it can be, yeah, a bit odd, I would say, because at the end of the day, we are service providers, and that's certainly true for the cigar industry as well, whether you work on the side of a brand or a manufacturer. Like in your instance, you're servicing other partners in form of tobacconists, retailers, lounges, or as a tobacconist yourself. Ultimately, you're serving somebody, and it should be in your best interest to focus on who's the other person, what is he or she looking for, and try to cater to that in the best way you can, much rather than imposing something on them.
Yeah, but ultimately, when you go into a bar or a restaurant and you're asking for a recommendation, you want to be given all that floryness. You want to be given all that,
Very
this,
true.
and
Absolutely.
that's what makes the experience. And that's and when somebody wants it, it's a great thing to do to talk about it and to get really in depth into it. But on a day-to-day casual basis, sitting with friends having a cigar, it's just nice to grab whatever is near to you that you like, and whether it's the much frowned upon IPA with a Connecticut or whatever. It's, if you enjoy it, then that's the way to do it. And I think that whilst I love that in the cigar industry, people want to know more and they're really excited and passionate to know more. I also think there's sometimes a danger of sort of, and we've sort of spoke about this previously with sort of how much information do you give people. There's too much of a danger to say this gets paired with this gets paired with this. If you smoke this cigar, you're going to get these notes, because people don't get it and then they go, "Oh, am I doing it wrong?" And you don't want people to think, you want it to be as inclusive as possible, and people not to overthink their experience or hamper it in any way.
Absolutely true. And what's interesting about this is it's a very fine line between what you were just describing, which is to impose or to go over the top in terms of information and telling other people what they're supposed to experience and how the whole thing is supposed to work. On the other hand, though, we oftentimes here on the show discuss that there's just not enough high quality information out there for people to really get their fingers dirty in terms of information and learning more about handmade premium cigars. And to be frank, the industry is not always, doing a great job at providing all these in-depth information and those insights. How do you think people all across the supply and the value chain of premium cigars can do a better job in order to take that next step and try to push the industry a little further towards what we see now with the wine industry, of course, with spirits, craft beer, coffee, and all these other fields of expertise and craftsmanship where there's a lot of resources and a lot of information out there, and you can truly take a deep dive into the behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that now we've got access to so much information about cigars, the fact that we're all now sat in this Zoom and with people that we may not have met in everyday life, and so you can Google any information that you want about cigars. I think ultimately, and I'm guilty as well. It's I think people in general need to stop just pushing the cigars that they're familiar with. They need to stop sort of sticking. So I mean, for example, if I enjoy a certain Nicaraguan profile and then they always sell that type because you're comfortable with it, I think you're never going to learn, you're never going to progress, and your customer or your account or your partner will never progress either. So I think it's, you know, as we tell all new smokers, but sort of don't take the advice yourself, which is smoke more, understand more, understand where the cigar comes from and understand the knowledge behind it. Even brands that people are like, oh, maybe turn their nose up to it, you know, try it, understand what people are saying. And well, if it's not for you, that's great. But just because it's not for you, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be for someone else. So never I guess what I'm trying to say is never make the decision for the customer. Never decide that they're gonna like it. So I think it's for us as firstly as people in the industry, it's open your minds a bit more, I guess. And then for consumers, I guess the exact same thing is to try more, go outside your comfort zone, try cigars, blends, countries, that you normally wouldn't.
Excellent point. Um, when it comes to your own cigar journey, do you see an evolution as to what what you enjoy, what you like to pair your cigars with, how you think about the industry, all of that sort of mixed into one big drum. Um, how has that changed over the years, and even more so, as we said in the beginning, now that you're part of the industry?
Well, like a lot of people in the UK, I started off smoking only Cubans. Um, and that was kind of my first entry into the cigar industry. And then as I got more passionate about it, I wanted to try different countries and different blends and different sizes and all the vitolas under the sun. And then I went through a long, long period of just smoking very full-bodied, very pepper-driven Nicaraguan style cigars. And I still tend, 9 times out of 10, to smoke a Nicaraguan cigar. But for me, I sort of now more around the medium profile. So things like Tatawahe and ones that are just very nuanced and they take you on a journey for me are sort of the cigars that I gravitate towards or some of the more medium bodied AJ Fernandez. And I know as I'm saying that I'm smoking a Padron 80 years. So but I think for me it's not about the power anymore. It's about the nuance behind it and the story behind it and seeing those different sections and thirds along the cigar and appreciating the craftsmanship. And I think when you spend as much time reading about cigar companies and talking with the owners that you see beyond, oh, I just like that strong pepper profile, and you sort of appreciate what they were trying to put down. I mean, like when we went at the start of the year on the tour to Nicaragua, um, and you're chatting to Don Pepin Garcia and the guys from Padron and AJ and all over and Oliva, and you see that it isn't just this product, and it's it just makes you see the cigar differently. For me, it did anyway, and it sounds very hippy dippy, but it just made me see it from a different light and just made me appreciate it and more passionate about the cigar than I was previously. So yeah, for me now it's restrained elegance, I think is sort of a good word. And like when I smoked a Marifel cigar, that I think is the epitome of restrained elegance. It's yeah, just that for me is my wheelhouse, as they say.
Good stuff. Well, besides personal preferences, obviously you have to switch heads every now and then in your role as a panelist for Cigar Sense, and Franca is here on the call with us, which is it's wonderful, and it's great to see Franca again here. But tell us a little bit about your experiences serving on the panel for Cigar Sense, and we've had Franca on the show before, and we spoke about Cigar Sense every now and then. Uh, Probably not enough. Definitely more people should take a look at it and explore some of the fantastic work Frank and her team and the panelists have done previously, and will continue to do so. But yeah, just from your point of view, I'd love to hear about your experience and the way you look at it.
Oh, I'd love to. What Frank and David do, I think is just so fascinating. I think that woman is just an intelligent, mind-boggling woman that I just, yeah, fascinating. What she is opened my sort of not just my eyes but my senses to is incredible. So it started off just I get geeky with stuff, so I like to know um the reasons behind things and why things taste like they are, and I always found that at times I was guilty of, oh, the cigar doesn't draw right. Instead of going, okay, will it maybe progress? Will it, will it change? So part of my development is to get rid of my own biasness in terms of all aspects of construction of the cigar. So, be it how it draws, how it burns, how it performs, how it tastes. And I honestly thought the best way of doing that was when I was researching it was I came across Cigar Sense. And I did the exam, and God, it was hard, but it was good. It was so enlightening, but it was tough, like it really was. Um, and then I spoke to Frank more, and then she invited me as a panelist, which I was massively grateful for, and continue to be. And we're meeting up in Italy at the end of September, which I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, I think just her approach is very fresh. I think it's a really interesting way that it's important for consumers and for retailers and distributors to be able to analyze cigars and look at it from a constructive point of view, and almost have a benchmark as to, so we're all singing off the same hymn sheet. And the fact that she's got manufacturers who work alongside with her, I think speaks volumes. So it's a great lot of fun. At times I'm sitting there and I'm sort of like, I have no idea what she's talking about. She's coming off all these phrases, and I'm just sitting there going, I feel so dumb. But it's just really good. It's for me, it challenges myself, and it sort of gets me to set aside my biasness and my long ingrained wrong theories and things, and to look at a cigar overall as a product, and how it performs, and ultimately what the message is from it. So it's, yeah, if anybody is on the fence about doing it, do the Cigar Sense course, get involved with it. The algorithm that they've done in terms of being able to recommend cigars based on your previous on your profile and the previous cigars that you've smoked is so accurate. And I've smoked a lot of cigars that have been recommended to me on the website, on the platform. And yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great bit of kit.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing, man. And since we're already talking about exciting projects and stuff that you're involved with, what's in the pipeline with TOR imports? I know that the Charatan brand is getting a lot of love, and just what's installed for you, and what are you looking forward to towards the end of the year with TOR imports and all the other stuff you're involved with?
Well, there's a lot going on at the minute. So obviously, as I mentioned, the tour tour. So it's we do this every year since 2016. And every year, so we bring accounts over. We've done Nicaragua, we've done Dominican Republic, we've done Mexico. So 2025 going to Nicaragua again. Um, and we bring a select amount of our accounts, retail and hospitality accounts over. So that's very exciting. So 2025 is already sold out. Starting to take names for 2026. Obviously in Dortmund, We're launching Charatan internationally. This was something that I know that Scott had got a lot of grief, maybe because there was a lot of people who wanted Charatan in the international market. It's the best-selling Nicaraguan brand, so there was a demand there. There were people curious about, it, and obviously the fact that it's got this beautiful story to it. Um, uh, Frederick Chardin in Mansell Street in 1863. It's a British brand. It's looking for it to be an iconic British brand, and so they were launching that in Dortmund. So keep an eye out for that. But it's, as I said, it's only going to be international for the moment. So obviously Carlos, who's on here, has been working his socks off putting that together, and yeah, very very exciting, very very cool. Um, and I'm sure that if he wants to say anything about that, I'm sure he will. But then next year there's a very exciting thing called Meet the Makers, and which is basically like the best of the best from the worlds of cigar and whiskey. I won't say any more, but that's going to be next year. There's going to be details released about that soon, so keep an eye out for that. But that's going to be a fairly big thing. So yeah, I mean, as a company, we're looking at what we're doing. We as I mentioned before, we're sort of optimizing how we look at the lines. We have around sort of 19 accounts or partners that we work with now in terms of manufacturers. And yeah, it's just a very exciting time. We constantly have cigar makers coming over, as you know yourself. Um, yeah, it's a busy time. There's a lot coming up. We have the exclusivity, should I say, for Cunard, which is all the QE2, all the Queen Mary, all those lines of I was going to say ships, but it's not a ship, it's a
Is it
what's it
fair to
called?
say cruise line or
Cruise line.
They're called cruise liners. They send you overboard, John, if you call it a ship.
A ship.
It's Queen Mary, Victoria, Elizabeth, and Anne.
And Anne. And so it's four in the company, and we supply exclusively the cigars for there. So our colleague Alfonso was and Carlos were recently doing a training session with all of them, which was just very fast paced for them. I take my hat off to them. But yeah, so that I mean that's very exciting. And as I said, the hospitality department is growing. We've got a lot of new accounts, a lot of very exciting accounts coming up soon. So yeah, it's a busy time for us, but we're excited for the future, and we're ready for it.
That's wonderful to hear, John. And I have to say, kudos to Scott, to Carlos, to you, to the entire team over at TOR in the UK. Um, Not only because I'm spoiled in the sense and very grateful for calling you partners for what we do together, but just because I think you've definitely brought something to the UK market that was very much needed and is greatly appreciated and absolutely refreshing, very suitable for a younger audience and for a new generation of cigar enthusiasts, both involved with the industry or on the consumer side. And so I really applaud you guys for everything that you do in the UK and for your very passionate effort. And for me personally, and also the Mervo family, thank you for your partnership and for what you guys do. And I hope that Scott, Carlos, and of course you, John, will accept my humble invitation to get you back on the show once the Chariton brand is up and running, and then maybe we can dedicate a full show to the eclectic history of Chariton London and talk about the brand because I'd love to take a special deep dive into the history there and explore one of the, as you said, John, truly iconic UK brands, particularly in the cigar world. Since we're already talking pleasantries and sharing shout outs and thank yous, I also wanted to let everybody know watching the YouTube live stream, our dear fellow friend and ambassador Ray has his own YouTube channel up and running now and will be going live on a weekly basis on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely make sure to check out the late smoke from a good friend Ray Prodanoff. I look forward to the first live session there. So kudos to you, Ray, and all best for that new journey. John, what else can I say? But thank you wholeheartedly. What a privilege to have you on the show with us and to dive a little bit into your hospitality background, the tea side of things. I feel like we should do a tasting session on here at some point where we
Yeah. Okay.
probably announce a cigar and everybody should pick up that cigar and pick up a tea of yours, and then we'll do a tasting session where it's less about the background story, but really about the nitty-gritty and sharing our notes. I think that would be a very fun format, and we should definitely put that on the calendar.
Yeah, 100%. No, I'll be up for that. I really would. That'd be good fun. I'll even do you as a good deal.
John, thank you very, very much for joining us again. It's been wonderful to have you with us here at the Light 'em Up Lounge.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been fantastic, and yeah, it's just been it's been lovely just to sit here and just chat about my past and obviously about tour now and the tea and everything. So yeah, no, thank you very much for your time, and thank you to all the listeners as well. It's been great fun. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. John Strange from Tour Imports live here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. Next week, we'll welcome Katrin Fischer from Intertabak, and we'll take a little sneak peek and talk more about the trade show and everything that's coming up in mid-September in Dortmund. So we'll see you then, same time, same station, right here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. Until then, be safe, be well, and light 'em up. Goodbye, everybody. Good night.
Thanks, John.
Thanks very
Love
much.
the accent.
Well done, John.
I just
Cheers.
put it on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.
Great stuff.